Hi everybody, I'm Eric Leichtenschlag from the AdMob Developer Relations team, and today I'm here to talk to you about DFP Showcase V2. So to start off, you might all be wondering, what is DFP Showcase? DFP Showcase is a sample app that features the different creative types offered by DoubleClick for mobile, DoubleClick for Publishers Mobile, both bundled and premium features. To the right here, you see a screenshot of what the version 1 app looked like with a set of 8 examples here. And what does V2 include? Well, V2 adds support for additional creative types such as MRAID banners, mobile image carousel ads, video interstitials on Android. And we also are more explicit about the categorization between bundled features offered to DFP publishers for small business and premium creative types which are offered to DFP premium publishers. So now that we know what the project is all about, let's walk through how to build it. So if you're trying to build this on Android, you're going to need the Android SDK installed with the latest system image. We recommend the latest image. You don't actually need the latest. We prefer the Eclipse development environment, or if you use IntelliJ, that's fine as well. And you'll want to download the DFP Showcase Android version 2 sample project from our Google Mobile Dev Google Code project, as well as the Google AdMob Ads SDK from our docs. If you're on iOS, you'll want to make sure you have Xcode 4.5 installed, as well as an iOS version 4.3 or higher. And you'll want to download the iOS version of the DFP Showcase app, as well as the Google AdMob Ads SDK for iOS. So currently, the Android version has just been released, and so we're going to walk through that today. The iOS version will be coming out shortly, but the implementation is pretty similar. So to build the project, we're just going to import the sample app that we downloaded into our workspace, add the Google AdMob SDK library that you also downloaded, and just run the app. That's all that's required. So I have an empty Eclipse workspace here. I'm going to go to File, New Project, import a project from existing code, and I already have it downloaded here. So I'm just going to open it up. And here's our project. We're also going to want to add the Google AdMob SDK in the libs directory. That way we don't need to reference it explicitly in our build path. So I've added it here. All the compile errors have gone away. We should be able to run this app right away. So I'm running it on a Galaxy Nexus emulator running Jelly Bean, and it's loading up the app. And this is what it looks like on Android. So we have a list view here, well, 2 list views in a tab controller here, showing all the different examples. If we click through, for example, just a basic image, we'll just come to an image activity, and it'll load the image ad. We can go to some more complex examples like mobile image carousel. And here we're getting a bigger 300 by 250 ad, or we should. Here we go, with multiple images, and you can swipe through. And you can also click through. These ads all have click-through URLs. So this is a Google Glass ad, and so we'll go to google.com/glass. So I'm going to quickly walk through how this is implemented on the native side. So here's our main activity with our tab controller here. We create a tab host, and we're adding 2 tabs. One's going to be for bundled, one's going to be for premium. We have our list of constants here representing each enum in the constant here represents an ad format. We give it a name, a size, an icon, and that'll be the icons that you see on the main page, so name, size, icon, as well as an ad unit that we're using to make the ad request. And the actual implementation checks to see which example we're running, and either creates a banner view or an interstitial with the appropriate ad unit. I'll walk through an example interstitial here. Let's walk through the mobile interstitial with auto close. So this interstitial will automatically close after 5 seconds because that's how it was set up. So that's pretty much the implementation on the native side. But I think what's more important for DFP publishers is how you actually set it up within DFP. So we're going to walk through each of these examples and talk about how they're set up in DFP. So the first example we have is just your basic image. I showed it to you already. We come into image, and it's just set up as a 360 by 50 banner here. So how did we do that in DFP? Well, this is using a bundled feature, so small businesses can use the image creative format template. And all you need to provide is a click-through URL. So we'll click through to plus.google.com, a size. So this was actually implemented as a 320 by 50 and a 360 by 50. So we can support some of the bigger Android devices like the Galaxy Nexus or S3, as well as like the iPhone 5, who's only 320 wide. We provide a click-through URL, target the ad unit size, and we're good to go. And we get an ad unit, and we just put that in our app and make sure we request the correct size, and we'll get that served. The downside of this basic image template is that you do not get high resolution images. What that means is if you upload a 320 by 50 image, you'll have a 320 by 50 creative, and that's what it'll look like on the screen. If you wanted to upload a 640 by 100 image for high resolution devices, it would actually look too big and it would only show the top left segment on the screen here. That's one of the downsides of using an image template like this. To get around that for high resolution images, you'll have to use a custom template that you can create or write some custom code, and we'll kind of walk through that later, how you do that. So the next sample we'll talk about is an AdMob banner. So within DFP, you can set up to backfill to AdMob, and what this is doing under the hood is calling into the Google AdMob SDK and requesting an AdMob ad. So how is that done in DFP? Well, it's set up as an AdMob creative type, and all you need to pass is your AdMob publisher ID, and DFP will go and request the AdMob ad for you. You also request a target size 320 by 50. In this case, we can't support 360 by 50 because AdMob doesn't support that as an explicit size. DFP requires specific sizes like 320 by 50, 300 by 250, and has to request the size that AdMob supports. Similar to the AdMob example is the SDK mediation example. So you can also implement AdMob mediation directly through DFP. So in this example, we're using the SDK mediation creative type, and we only set up one ad network here, which is AdMob, and also provided the publisher ID here. On the native side, this will actually go through the mediation flow, and you could set up multiple networks if you wanted to. We just have AdMob in this example. So again, you'll see it'll look the same. You'll see an AdMob ad, but again, you could set up multiple networks here. And you can also provide the timeout, which is how long we expect AdMob to wait for each network to come back with a creative or not. If it takes too long, we'll time out. So the next example we have here is just a text and image ad. There's a text and image template. This is all for small business. You just provide, again, a destination URL, the headline, so DFP Showcase ad is what you see up top, two descriptions which will flip, as well as the button text. I think that's if the button's not available. and it generates this text and image ad for you. So again, in the application, this is what it looks like. And we have our text and image ad. So this is also set up as a 320 by 50. The next example is a DFA tag. So as a DFP publisher, you might be working with a creative agency who sets up an ad in DoubleClick for advertisers and just gives you a DoubleClick tag. And you'll just go into DFP and create a DoubleClick tag template and pass in the redirect URL. And it will redirect to DFA and serve the DFA ad that the creative agency gave you. So in this case, this redirect URL points to a DoubleClick ad, also set up as a 320 by 50. And we can see it here below. So the next example we're showing here is an MRate expandable. This is actually using a third-party template where you actually are writing your own code. For this example, we set up two different creatives, one for 320 by 50 and one for 360 by 50. And the native application will determine the screen size to figure out which one is more appropriate to request. And the creative itself is using media queries to serve the appropriate assets for the expanded image. And we'll talk about that in a second. And it also uses the MRate API to expand the image. So let's quickly look at what it looks like in the application. We have in this case, we'll get a 360 by 50 because the Galaxy Nexus is big enough. If we click through, it'll open to an overlay. This is a one-piece expandable, and it's serving a 360 by 592 image in this case with some black borders and the big image here. And we can close it. And we'll walk through the creative code for this. So there's a couple things to look at here. The big thing to point out is the media query here. We're looking at only screens and a max height of 592, which represents a Galaxy Nexus. Then we'll serve a content URL for a 360 by 592 image. If the screen is bigger than that, so like the S3 has, I think, 640 density pixels high, then we'll serve the 360 by 640 image here. So this is how we can have the creative decide which asset to serve based on the screen size. And that's the basic HTML. We just have a banner. When it's clicked, we call mrate.expand. It's using the basic mrate expandable, or the mrate API to call expand. And it's a one-piece expandable because we're not passing in a parameter here. If expand can take a URL, and if you pass that, it'll be a two-piece expandable, and it will load the new HTML file that you pass there. On the JavaScript side, we're doing a couple things. We are listening for state changes. So when the mrate state changes, if it's expanded, we're setting the banner image to use the overlay banner. And the overlay banner will be one of these content URLs. And in the default case, when it's not expanded, we're just using the basic banner, which is a 360 by 50. Or the other creative would have a 320 by 50 here. And so when the creative loads, we're going to check if we're going to add the event listener for the state change. And if it's already in the default mode, then we're going to call handle state changes explicitly to set the class to banner. So this is all set up as a third-party creative template, and you have to put in all this code yourself. The final example that we're going to show from the bundled side is an interstitial. So this is a basic interstitial. It's also implemented as a third-party creative, but we're serving it as an interstitial within the SDK. So in this case, we just have one third-party creative, and because it's an interstitial overlay, the media queries won't work. I tested it out, and looks like the min and max height can be infinite because the overlay kind of spans past the screen. So the way we worked around this here is to on the native side, pass some parameters of the screen size basically to the creative, and the creative can read those and determine what asset to serve. This example also uses the countdown timer and can also auto-close the interstitial. So this is what it looks like on both iOS and Android. You can click the Show Interstitial button, and we'll put in the right creative based on the screen size. So how is this done in code? Again, we're looking at JavaScript here. This top portion shows how to implement the auto-close. We have a display counter of 5 seconds, and we'll start the countdown, and basically the number of seconds times 1,000 milliseconds. That's how long we'll wait to call addmob.opener.close. This is part of the Google Mobile Ads API. And after that time, we'll call addmob.opener.close, and it'll automatically close the interstitial. The magic with the multiple creatives here is under set image. So we get the screen width and screen height via this pattern. And this pattern screen width is coming directly from the native portion of the code, which is set down here. So in our add request, we're specifying some extras with the screen width parameter, which gets the screen width and density pixels, as well as the screen height. And we can read those within a DFP creative by doing %, pattern, colon, and then the extra key name. So for Galaxy Nexus, this will return 360 and 592 as a screen width and height. And we're going to get our image source based on this. So we're going to default to a smaller image. And if the screen height's more than 640, then we're going to set the image source to the 360 by 640 creative. If the screen height's greater than 592, we're going to set it to the 360 by 592 creative. So in this way, we're able to serve a different asset using the same code by checking the screen width and screen height that we're expecting from the native SDK. So that's it for the bundled features. Now I'm going to talk about the premium features offered in DFP. So the first one is mobile image carousel. This is set up as a creative template that's predefined called mobile image carousel app and web. You pass in a target size, in this case 300 by 250, click-through URL, the width and height of the images, and then you just upload 5 image assets. And DFP will create the snippet for you. It's read-only, so this is the creative code that's essentially sent to the application. And I'll show it to you in the app again. We get this carousel-looking ad that we can swipe through. So the advantage with DoubleClick for Publishers Premium is that you can get this template for free. You can actually implement the same thing with DoubleClick for Publishers Bundled if you had this code. So this snippet right here, you could actually copy and paste that. I guess you don't have access to it if you're not a premium publisher, but you could write the same code yourself, and you could host your own images, and you could essentially kind of make the same thing, but it's kind of a roll your own solution. Premium gives you these predefined templates which you can use to set up these types of creatives really easily. The next example I have here is a mobile image with the Google +1 button. So this, again, is another DoubleClick for Publishers Premium creative, predefined mobile image with Google +1 app and web. Again, you give it an image asset, a width and height, a click-through URL, and a couple other parameters, and it'll show the asset for you and also put in this Google +1 button. And again, the template snippet is below if you want to roll your own solution. So in the app, we're requesting the appropriate 300 by 250 size with the ad unit that we set up in DFP, and we get that ad. The next example we have is mobile interstitial with auto close. This is very similar to the interstitial example we showed you on the double-click for publishers bundled side, except the advantage here is that we can use a template instead of having to hand form our own code. So in this example, we set a target ad size, an image for portrait, an image for landscape, and a click-through URL, as well as how long we want to display this interstitial before we close it, and we get, and we can set up this interstitial. The creative template snippet is below. That's essentially what we use to build the bundled version of this interstitial. The downside of this specific template is it does not allow you to specify multiple image assets for different screen sizes. So if you wanted to do what we did in the regular interstitial example, you're still going to need to kind of hand form your own creative. But this is good to give you just your basic, in this case, 320 by 480 example. And if you rotated your device to landscape, it would give you the landscape version of this image. Our bundled premium example, or our bundled interstitial example, did not include landscape assets, and so you would see the portrait asset in landscape. So you would have to alter that code if you wanted to get this kind of effect. Another template that DFP Premium offers is image animation. So with image animation, you essentially set up a image animation template and upload a few images that you want to move between. You can decide how long each one of those assets gets displayed, how they're transitioned, and their click-through URL. And you get something that looks like this. We're going to serve this as an interstitial, and we provided 320 by 480 images. And here we have honeycomb images that are transitioning. So again, you get this template for free when you're a premium publisher. If you were doing this as a not premium publisher, you'd have to implement this yourself. Now I'm going to talk about the video interstitial template. For DFP Premium, again, we specify a default loading image while the interstitial is loading, and then we just upload a video file, and DFP will put it in all the right formats that you need for all different devices. You give it a destination URL, and you can also add a couple buttons on the bottom to go to Google Plus or post to Facebook or Twitter. And they all have click-through URLs as well. And using that template really quick, you can get a video interstitial. So this is our image while the video interstitial loading, and the video should start playing. Might be a little slow on the emulator. You can also decide whether or not this video interstitial should auto-close after it's done playing. So the last three templates we have here are custom templates. This is very similar to the basic image that we had on the bundled side, except we wrote our own code, but we're able to write a template for it so that we could keep reusing it for different types of creatives. So this is a click to download ad. It's essentially just your basic image, except its click-through URL is a Google Play URL, so it'll go to the Google Play Store as opposed to just a web browser. We also set up an equivalent iOS version that goes to the Play Store. I'm sorry, the Apple Store. And the benefit of this type of template that we set up here is we allowed you to specify a width and height, and as well as an image upload, but you can upload, in this case, a high-res image, like 640 by 100, and set the width and height to be 320 by 50, and the actual code here has an image tag which takes the bigger URL, but specifically sets the width and height to 320 by 50. So this allows you to shoehorn, I guess, a higher res creative into a smaller space. And so for those bigger devices, bigger res devices that are actually 640 by 100, you'll get that clearer image. So again, if you're a bundled publisher or a small business publisher, you can write this code yourself. You just won't be able to create a template for it, and every image you want to do high res like this, you'll have to, again, hand form your own code. So similarly for click to call, it's using the exact same template, high res images. We have it set up 320 and 360 by 50 for both, iPhones as well as Androids with bigger screens. And the click-through URL in this case is just a tel : with the telephone number. Finally, the click to map, again, very similar, same 320 and 360 by 50 creatives. I think I have the wrong image set up here, but the click-through URL will be a Google Maps URL, and it'll open up Google Maps. So just to demo one for click to map, it asks if you're looking for coffee, and it clicks through to Google Maps, which has a query for coffee in Mountain View. So it'll open up Maps, it'll input your query, assuming you put in the right URL, and it'll do the search. So these are all the creatives that we have in DFP Showcase V2. I'm going to leave you with a couple resources for how to get started with this, and some other useful resources. So the SDK download you can find at developers.google.com/mobileads/SDK/download. The DFP site where you can set up your creatives is just google.com/DFP. If you want to set up AdMob creatives or SDK mediation, you can go to google.com/ads/AdMob to log into your AdMob account. If you need help setting up the native Android or iOS code, you can go to our developer docs at developers.google.com/mobileads/SDK/docs/DFP/fundamentals. We have a specific doc set especially for DFP. If you have any questions, you can ask us in our forum at developers.google.com/mobileads/SDK/community. You can also see our Plus page for all ads-related updates on your Google developer products. We also have a blog. You can search for the AdMob SDK tag on our blog for cool blog posts. For code examples, like the V2 version of this app, it'll be hosted on code.google.com/p/our Google Mobile Dev, our Google Mobile Dev Google Code project. And finally, for some sample creatives, if you're a small business publisher, some of these creatives, like interstitial with autoclose and mraid expandable, they have some sample code from those templates on this support.google.com DFP small business site. I would recommend that if you're looking to do mraid expandables or kind of writing your own code and need some help. So that's it. I'm Eric Leichenschlag, and thanks for watching.